This. Hey, Jeff.
Can you put, can you, I don't know if it's my sound or yours. I may have to get my earphones. If you, do you think you can up your sound a little bit, Brian?
Sure.
Yeah, you are sounding a little quiet.
Well, that's because I'm having a very peaceful morning. How's that?
I was going to say uncharacteristically.
I was feeling quite calm until you guys brought up the sound. Robert, how is the sound for you?
It's a little better. If you can make it any louder, fine. Otherwise, I think it's okay.
I think that's it. I think that's what I got. I just decided to talk up and talk to the thing. So we're a little bit time limited because of meditation is freedom and the practice. So let's just go at it. And what I'd like to do is start, since it's Vajrayana, start with a lineage chant. Uh, I'm going to do the Kagyu one. If you want to do something else, mute yourself and go ahead. But good to invoke the lineage. All right. Great Vajradhara Tilo Noro Marpa Mila, Lord of Dharma, Gampopa, knower of the three times omniscient Karmapa, holders of the four great and eight lesser lineages, Drikung, Taklung, Salpa, these three glorious Drukpa, and so on, masters of the profound path of Ma. Comparable protectors of beings, the Taco Kagyu, I supplicate you, grant your blessing so that I will follow your example. Revulsion is the foot of meditation, as is taught to this meditator who is not attached to food and wealth. Life grant your blessing so that I am. Help me out, Robert. I was going so fast, I ran off the rails.
Just go back to revulsion.
Revulsion is the foot of meditation, as is taught. Uh,
The guru, to this meditator who was not attached to food and wealth.
Cuts the ties to this life, grant your blessing so that I have no desire for honor and gain. Devotion is the head of meditation, as is taught the Guru opens the gate to the treasury of oral instruction. Cater who continually supplicates him, grant your blessing so that genuine devotion is born in me. Awareness is the body of meditation, as is taught whatever arises is fresh, the essence of realization to this meditation. Who rest simply without altering it, grant your blessing so that my meditation is free from conception. The essence of thoughts is Dharmakaya, as is taught nothing whatever, but everything arises to this meditator who arises in unceasing play. Grant your blessing so that I realize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. Through all my births may I not be separated from the
Perfect
so
guru and
enjoy
so
the
enjoy
splendor
the
of Dharma,
splendor.
perfecting the virtues of the paths and bhumis. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradharma. Here we go. So our friends are now here. um, so I'm really happy to have this discussion about Poa, and I'm recording it because you may want a copy. And I told our friend Grant, who's another one of my students, that I would send him a copy. Um, there's two things I'd like to start with, and there's a couple of introductory ideas, and I'm just going right at it because I'm talking to two well-seasoned practitioners. I don't have to dance as much. Um, the first is uh, we might think about who else to invite into this. If there were other people who would be interested or who would benefit. For me, the qualification would be that they are at some level of Vajrayana practice. So depending on your, practice tradition, that either means you're doing a sadhana practice, you've had a Vajrayana teach, doing a sadhana practice, had a Vajrayana teacher, maybe you've done the preliminaries, Nundro, maybe not, right? But maybe you've had pointing out instruction, maybe not, right? So I don't want to present speed bumps, but somebody who's never had any introduction to Vajrayana, this will seem very, very weird.
Mhm.
But as I thought about who's in community refuge and who's in Meditation is freedom. There are people like, Bonnie is a 3-year retreat graduate. Margaret is, but she's busy at the moment, or she'd be here. Um, Grant is a Vajrayana practitioner, so there's other people. So let's just do
So
that first.
let me just ask you about Cynthia.
Mhm.
Cynthia, her practice actually is Phowa.
Oh,
Um, and that's been her primary practice probably for 50 years. Um, I don't know whether would you like me to invite her? I don't
sure,
know if she's interested or not,
sure. That's very odd that that's her primary practice, but sure.
and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's the primary practice of her teacher.
Oh, okay.
Well, if she has any knowledge about it, it's certainly
Yeah,
helpful. You
sure.
know,
Let's ask her. She was on my maybe list. Um, I'd have to go back and look at Michelle. Is at the edge of becoming my Vajrayana student, so I might ask her. I'll be talking with her tomorrow. Right, so that would be one of the
It,
qualifications you
I
have.
think she'd be a wonderful addition.
Yeah. Anybody else? And it doesn't have to be somebody who's in community refuge or meditation is freedom. If there's anybody else
I don't know. I have to think about it. Children was obviously qualified. I don't know if this is a practice that she'd be interested, but I will run it by her.
Okay, okay. So they would be good things to, because the more the merrier. And, I really think it's good to know that the person leading has some qualification. Otherwise, it's the blind following the blind, or the uninformed following the uninformed, or whatever the right way to say that would be. Um, but I think personally, I think we need to get past hyper qualification for stuff, like presenting speed bumps to bringing this into our culture, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Um, to take a deep breath. You guys want to say anything more about who to include, or
No, I just want to tell you why I'm interested if you have them.
that was my next question, right? Why
Okay.
are why are we doing this? So, Jeff, you go.
Okay. So uh there are certain things of which I am virtually certain. One is that there will be a transmigration at death. Um, I really am I 100% certain? Of course not, but I'm close. So I am close, and I have a lot of logical reasons and scientific evidence to help me with that. So, which would be fun to talk about, but it's not relevant now. So, in order to be able to navigate that successfully, I want to be able to have a positive transmigration. And I realize, so when so I think it's been very important for me to practice dying because I don't want it to be unfamiliar and scary and lose my cool when that's happening. And so, in order to, my ultimate goal, if I were to make a wish, would be to transmigrate to a pure land, complete my practice, become enlightened, and return to help others. That's I say it every day. So if it sounds like I've got it memorized,
That's
that's
the game plan.
yeah, that's my game plan. And so in order to be able to do that, I realize that it's gonna be when the dissolution of the elements happen. You've got a couple of things going for you. You've got your karma, which I don't know if I want to bank on that, and you've got your practice, which is terrific. But it'd be nice to have techniques to be able to accomplish my goal, and that's where I'm coming from. I think for me, it's of critical importance because I'm virtually certain it will happen.
Right.
That I'll be at that point. So I want as many tools in my toolbox in order for able to have a positive transmigration as I defined it.
That's great. Okay. Excellent. Um, that's wonderful motivation. right? It's not only classic, it's the best motivation. Uh, Robert, how about you? Do you want to talk about why we're here or what you want from this?
So I'm very interested in the inner
Hmm.
yogas.
Hmm.
And for some years, probably over 10 years, I looked into dreaming and lucid dreaming and, you know, I studied a fair bit with, what's his name? Whose name I can never remember.
Andrew.
Polish guy, yeah. Um, and I took a course and it doesn't work for me or hasn't worked for me. Um, and the reason I did that was because I thought it would take me closer to being present at the time of death.
Hmm.
And so I, I've never really thought a lot about Phowa. And when Jeff mentioned it, well, a few weeks ago when we were talking, I thought, it's a kind of a logical outgrowth
Hmm.
of what's happening. And I've got a little cancer scare, and that's,
Hmm.
waking me up. And so, okay, you know what? Maybe it's all for a good purpose.
Right.
And so that's a way less profound than Jeff, but it's as real.
It's a good motivation, right? So it's good. Um, for myself, having just turned 70, which is sort of on the way to really old. It's not really old yet, but it's on the way to really old. Um, and having had the opportunity to do this practice in the 3-year retreat and also receive teachings on it in another context, um, it's one of the things I want to focus on in the next 10 years. So and I have a very similar motivation, both. So I think I'm spanning or bridging the motivation, Robert, that you expressed, and Jeff, the one that you expressed. It's classic uh, Tibetan Vajrayana that uh, one can achieve full awakening or full enlightenment within one lifetime. But it helps to know that their definition of lifetime. So it's sort of like the fine print at the bottom of the promise, um, 1 million-mile warranty, and then you see, well, it doesn't count the tires, and it's not the muffler, and it's not this, and it's like it's the drivetrain or something that. So the fine print of one lifetime in Vajrayana is from one conception. So whenever you think consciousness joins the human body, so let's keep it really simple and go at conception, right? Um, to the next conception, which includes the period between your death and when you take rebirth. So when they say in one lifetime, they're pointing at that whole from one taking birth to the next joining your consciousness to two cells, right? Or one cell that's ready to divide, however, right? The biology of it. Um, and the most potent time is in between your last breath and your next conception. That's when, if you've practiced well and worked on your karma and your sense of connection to the teachings, that's the easiest time to achieve full awakening. And this practice is designed to take advantage of that. Um, so to take you to full awakening, take you to a pure land, etc. And there's a lot to talk about in terms of philosophical assumptions and religious language and all of that. But I just like, okay, so this is a practice designed for dying, and you there's the sort of period of dying. I was talking to a friend yesterday. He's actually a real estate agent, and his mom, uh, his mother-in-law, has just gone into hospice, and they're giving her the sort of pain medications that hasten death. They're not trying to kill her, but what they're giving her will make that process go quicker, as well as ameliorate the pain. And from the Tibetan point of view, she has entered the period of dying. It's not like the last 3 minutes. It's when the signs begin, and mother-in-law is well into that, until her consciousness dissolves. So there's a lot to talk about of like the mechanics and the philosophy and how all that works, and that would be stuff to discuss to master the practice and really go deep into it. But I just wanted to start with, okay, so this is about, Jeff, you were using the expression transmigration, and I often hear it as transference, but same, right? It's consciousness leaving and going to its next train stop, right? Um, and we can have all kinds of philosophical arguments about the mechanics of that and how that all works. But in some sense, there is some appreciation that the force of consciousness carries forward. So I'm going to pause for breath. Thoughts? Anybody want to ask anything? I can rattle away, but I don't want to just do that for 45
Keep
minutes.
going, Brian.
Okay.
Keep going. Yeah.
So, this whole thing. So this is Vajrayana, and Robert, you've heard me say this, many times that the Vajrayana. I hope it's okay if I out you that you're one of my students, one of my Vajrayana students, if Jeff doesn't already know that, right?
I'm embarrassed.
Right.
You should be proud.
I'll deal with it.
I am proud and grateful.
um, so where was I going? The Vajrayana completely agrees with the foundation teachings and the Great Way, with the Hinayana and the Mahayana. So, without going into all of the nuts and bolts of the Hinayana, in essence, there is no solid me. And so, if we are talking about the dissolution of consciousness, it's built on the idea that this body is, it's a very, it's compelling. It appears like it feels real in the sense of solid and all of that, but it doesn't take much analysis to go, it's temporary and changeable, not solid. And my sense of personal identity, same, right? Very compelling, but changeable and not a solid thing, right? So the Vajrayana is going to agree with that. Even if we're talking about the ejection of consciousness, we are not talking about a thing. And that's essential. And then in terms of the Great Way, the radical open, empty, full, wide open, shunya quality of things, that is devoid or empty or null or shunya of any thinginess to cling to. So no phenomena, including the Pure Lands, are things. Or the Buddhas. They're not things. They're not permanent, solid gods or goddesses or heavens or hells or, we're going to talk about them in a very metaphoric way that we might forget that temporarily. But from the Vajrayana point of view, it's critical to know that, that's language describing an experience, but it's more, see, community refuge, more like a river than a rock, right? It's a flow of experience. So what we're going to describe in Phowa practice, it's not a thing. I'm not a thing practicing it, and when I'm working with it in injecting the consciousness, it's not a thing. If you get that, that takes us way past multiple layers of problems of people, concretizing, making, thingifying, my soul's going to the next body. Next time I'm going to choose to be the son of, somebody that makes me look really looking good and it's uber wealthy. That's my goal. And it's like, no, you've made it too much of a thing. Right? So I'm pausing. Yeah, Robert.
I'm I think I know the answer, but I just want to be really clear. When you said it's not a thing, you're not talking about the process of transference. You're not talking about the process of Phowa. You're talking, that's not a thing, of course, but consciousness also is not a thing.
Consciousness is not a thing. So, going back to meditation is freedom, and we've done this a lot in, community refuge, talking about I don't say the nature of mind, but, what's mind? And it's like a moment of experience plus phenomena come together. So that is a temporary occurrence. So in terms of, um, Tibetan Buddhist, Indo-Tibetan Buddhist understanding, if it's temporary, it's not a thing. And then you have the next moment of consciousness, and then the next moment, which is why I like the river. It's flowing, right? The river's not a thing, it's an occurrence. It might be an enduring occurrence because the river banks are there and the water keeps coming downstream, but it's not a forever thing, and it's constantly changing. So same thing for consciousness, not a solid thing. Does that help, Robert? Or
I think it'll develop over time. I guess the one question I would have is, what is the perceiving of these phenomena? How is that being perceived? There's no perceiver.
I'm contemplating how to answer that. That's the $64,000 question. Right? So I'll try it this way. The answer is not satisfying. So I'll just let you know ahead of time. You won't, the answer will not, it's not like being served a nice juicy T-bone steak or, beautiful piece of cake and you go, yum, you sort of shake your head and go, that's the answer, right? Um, we come out of a cultural context that assumes that if there is a perception, there must be a perceiver. So we come out of and it's so ingrained to us, it seems silly to say that. How could there be perception without some individual to perceive? And the Buddhist answer is all you can reliably state is that perception is occurring. If you begin to assert a perceiver, then find the perceiver, and you will find that there isn't any solid, permanent perceiver. There's no ego, right? But only an idiot would say perception isn't happening. At least that's how I feel. It's like, oh, there is no perception. It's just a complete blank. Well, that doesn't match my experience, and my guess is it doesn't match yours. So, perception is happening. So your question is, what's perceiving? And the Buddhist answer is, can't answer that. The assumption behind the question, assumes that there's a what and a who. And it's a more accurate description of reality to say perception is happening.
So,
Uh, if I were to give you the Dzogchen answer, I would say, or even the Mahamudra answer, I would say open awareness is aware of itself awaring without being a thing, which is the same thing as saying perception is happening. It just sounds better.
So is it
Jeff, I see you want to jump in, but let's let Robert go and then you.
consciousness is closely aligned with awareness?
Yeah,
Would we say it's the same thing?
for the moment.
Okay, that's helpful. That's
Yeah,
good
we
enough.
might we might
We
get
don't
more
have to go.
refined as we go along,
Okay,
um,
thank you.
because it's sort of like a blunt, it's like a blunt axe in terms of what we're going to talk about, but for the moment, yeah, the Tibetans have
Okay,
like 18 words for this stuff, so it's like, well, this is this little bit and this little bit, but since we're speaking in English, and I don't speak Tibetan, I just know that they're that much more refined. Let's say yes for the moment,
okay.
consciousness and awareness pointing in the same
Thank
direction.
you.
Jeff, you wanted to jump in?
I was just going to say that I can only really wrap my human mind around certain ideas and concepts, and selflessness is one of them. Thank goodness that I'm able to wrap my mind around.
Mhm.
And with regard to Robert's question, honestly, I can't wrap my mind around a definitive answer.
Right,
And it's not because there isn't one, it's because my mind is a human mind at this
right,
moment.
right.
And that's all I can say, which is as unsatisfying as what Brian said. But
Yeah,
I really believe it's true. There are many things around which I can't wrap my mind,
yeah,
and this is certainly one of them.
yeah,
So I have a tendency to kind of let that go, knowing that the I that exists is entirely 100% made up, uh, and I'm making it up over and over and over again.
yeah,
So the perceiver, I'm not really sure. Hey, if we really knew the answer, we might even say there are no perceptions. I have no idea, but I'm not there. You know
right,
what I mean? So
right.
I'm kind of backburnering that for me.
Good. Well, that's very helpful, and and thank you for being so direct and so real. Um, because the Vajrayana, in my experience, so we're heading into we're talking about Poa, right? We're not heading into it; we're already talking about it. And the Vajrayana uses um, the way things appear, or the word is oh, I'm trying to kunza. Um, the way reality shows up, the costume that experience wears, all dressed up is what it means in Tibetan, kunzup, right? So our experience shows up, and it feels like there is a perceiver and an I, and everything you just said, Jeff. Like, yes, let's put that all philosophically on the back burner, and it feels like I'm conscious, or you feel like you're conscious. So we're going to use that experience to sort of catapult ourselves into a bigger experience, into the bigger truth. So this teaching is sometimes called the two truths, um, or the absolute truth and the relative truth. Relative is just this is how it shows up. This is how we relate to it. How it's relatable. Um, we could have a philosophical conversation about pure consciousness, but it would be rather esoteric and ethereal, and at the end of which you'd be going, what do I do with that? And as soon as you have the what do I do with that question, you're back into the relative. So helpful to know that there are these two aspects of describing reality, how it feels, and the bigger picture. And then the special skill of the Vajrayana is that we use how it feels to get ourselves closer to that bigger picture. So we can we can have that as our intention. And Jeff, you said it. I want to go to the Pure Land. I want to achieve complete awakening, come back to help others. It's like, okay, we're describing the bigger picture, but we're going to use our experience of consciousness as if we could eject that, right? As if it was a thing that we could shoot out and aim. somewhere, right? So we're using relative appearance to get to absolute truth. That's the skillful means, right? A lot of the other pathways, like you could be an absolute purist of the middle way or the great way, and go, no, no, we just have to focus on shunya. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead. Take that as far as you can. Like, that's wonderful. This is different, right? So we're not having an argument with them. It's just going, that's wonderful. There are schools that do that, right? But this is a practice that comes out of using the way things are, or how they show up all dressed up in costume to get ourselves to a bigger picture. So I'm going to pause. Question? All right. So maybe the next thing to say is about the bigger picture. Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana, it's also Chinese and Japanese and Korean versions of this, right? Let's keep it simple, right? The Indo-Tibetan thing is, I like to say, it's 100% metaphor and 100% literal at the same time. So I'm also talking about the bigger and smaller pictures, right? But it's 100% metaphoric and 100% literal. And so the assumption in this practice is that you have somehow connected enough with consciousness, mind, nature of mind, Mahamudra, Rigpa, like all the words we can use to describe it, that you could um, transfer that or eject that or migrate that. I'm just going to say transfer, right? Whatever word you want to use, right? But you could transfer that from you to an experience of pure awakening. And the Indo-Tibetan description of that, they would say it's a pure land. That's like the realm of complete awakening. And then they have lots of descriptions of them, and there are lots of them. So it's not just the pure land of Dewa Chen, which is Amitabha's Sukhavati I think it's Dewa Chen in Tibetan and Sukhavati in Sanskrit, or Shambhala's a pure land, or um, um, Vajrapāṇi.
Akanishta? Is Akanishta something? I don't know. Forget
Um,
it. That's
yeah,
irrelevant.
I'm
It doesn't matter.
drawing a blank. It is, and I'm drawing a blank at the moment. Um,
It's okay.
that's okay, right? So, and then the Buddha itself, like we're going to be visualizing different embodiments or expressions of being fully awake. So, and this is where it's helpful to know, okay, it's a metaphor, it's religious language, we're talking about something that's important, but we're not going to get trapped into making it into a thing. So it's a good description, and it's also metaphoric. Um, and so we're going to visualize the presence of completely awake, compassionate mind, open, compassionate, awake experience. It's a nice river, as the Buddha Amitabha, or I think Amitabha, right? And then there's a description. He's red, he's wearing monastic robes, he's holding a begging bowl in the palms of his hands as he's sitting in meditation posture. He's glowing with compassion. He's good looking. Whatever. That's a description, right? And all the elements of that description will mean something. So if you have a meditational deity practice, this should be familiar, or a yidam practice, all the elements express something, but we're not, they're not things, right? So we're going to imagine we're ejecting our consciousness and sending it to that experience in a realm that would contain that kind of being. And then later in the practice, Amitabha becomes a different version of the same energy called Amitayas, and that pours energy back into us and helps you live longer, right? And be ready to die when you die. So the reason I'm going through this to not get caught in the details of the practice today is just this basic idea that, we're going to use our imagination. And I think both of you have heard me talk about this, that, I love that Dan Brown translated the word for visualization, and he said it's mikpa in Tibetan. So mik is I, but using the principle of metonymy. So the eye is like any of the senses. So the eyes, the ears, the tongue, the nose, the sensory, that's that's what they're pointing at with Mick, and then Pa makes it a thing, right? So it's equally, you could translate it as an I thing. We're visualizing, that's very literal, but the sense of it is we're imagining. So I can imagine a sound, like imagine a bell ringing, a temple gong, and each of us has some kind of sound in our mind. Or imagine the scent of a rose or your favorite perfume. Now imagine the person wearing the perfume. Like we're not, maybe it's visual, but there's for me there's an imagination that immediately springs forward. So we're going to use the ability of our mind to do that to express or dress up the bigger truth so that it's workable for us. So we're going to see if we can inject our consciousness or point it towards that experience. I'm pausing for breath because I just said a lot.
I'm good.
Robert?
Keep going.
Okay. So let's take 3 steps back, because usually, it doesn't have to be done this way, but I'm just going to ask, the way I was taught this, I was taught it inside of the practice of Vajrayogini, which is a meditational deity or a yidam, in which I'm visualizing myself as that expression of awake. So, Robert, I know you have Vajrayogini practice. Jeff, I know you and I've talked about yidam practice. Do you have a yidam practice?
I have, well, I've had empowerments in many different, chakra samvara, body mandala, and the Kala chakra, and a few others.
But they haven't been your main practice. It's not what you do.
Not really, no. Guru yoga, which is my main practice.
Okay. Okay. Well, Guru Yoga will stand you in good stead, but that prompts me to say a few things that come out of Yidam practice. So see if I can edge up on this, and I'm going to do a couple of screen shares if I can, right? In a sense that we have about 10 minutes left, and then I'm going to need to ring off, get my head into meditation is freedom. Um, and we'll schedule another one, right? And invite more people, right? So there is an understanding in, I'm just going to say Buddhism and stop saying Indo-Tibetan Buddhism and hope that that's where I'm coming from. Don't need to keep waving the credentials. Um, there's an understanding that there is the external physical body, and then there is a more subtle experience of, let's call it the energetic body. Now, again, going back to, it's not a thing, right? So we're describing the experience of awareness and consciousness and energy within this physical body. So, like, yes, we have the physical body. Let's shortcut past that and see if I can pull up the screen share thing. And will it let me do this? Oh, just give me a second to see if I can find what I want to find here. Okay. This. All right. So inside of Buddhism, That's Vajrayana Buddhism. There is this sense that inside of your physical body, which is what's represented by this sort of darker blue outline, right? There are three principal channels through which your consciousness or energy flows. And depending on the system, there are these different wheels or circles of where energy collects, distributes itself, expresses itself, right? So this has one, two, three, four. This is out of the Vajrayogini Tantra. Sometimes there's a sixth one here a fifth one here at the very top of this blue sort of fluted opening, right? And then often this exchange lower, this goes lower, and there's a uh, so if this counting from the top was one at the crown, two in the forehead, three at the throat, four at the heart, five at the belly button, or shortly, like a couple of fingers underneath of it. Five would be at the genitals, and then sometimes there is a sixth one lower at either the perineum or extending below. But let's let's stay with this one, right? Because it's not a thing, right? This is an expression of an experience. So they're trying to portray an experience. And the teachings will go that, your consciousness flows principally through these channels. Um, and it's most of the time in human beings, it is trapped in either this white, this is supposed to be white, slightly tinged with red, and this is red, slightly tinged with white. So let's just call them red and white. They are reversed in women and men, right? But this is the male version, right? And then here's the central channel. So there's a center one, a right one, and a left one. And I find it easy to remember blues in the middle, reds on the reds on the right. So RR, red on the right, and then the others are sort of obvious. And this has an opening at the top that opens like an oboe or like it has a horn-like opening that opens at the top. It doesn't show it. It also has a slight flare here. And these side channels come into the very bottom and enter the center, like just like a straw entering the horn, right? And for unawake beings, they curl around and come out the nostrils. If you achieved complete awakening, they would lift and come out of the red and the white one would come out of the urna or the third eye, right here. Right, so that's one of the physical differences. This is describing a normal human. And so I'm going to pause with that for a moment and see if there are any thoughts or questions. Okay, so I'm going to stop this
There's
share.
lots of questions, but not for today.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share. It's funny how Zoom has changed this meeting. Stop share because I want to go to another slide that I found for today. See if I can open it up. Oh, come on here. Go away. Okay, I'm going to give you another diagram of the same thing. This is also drawn from the Vajrayogini Tantra. And Robert, you were talking about wanting to work with the inner yogas. This is all inner yoga stuff from Vajrayogini, but it's very similar. Different tantras like Chakrasamvara, Havajra, Yamantaka, like all of them, they just have different versions of this, right? But it's all that same principle of a central channel with the two side channels, the red on the right, the white on the left, and energy flowing through those. So then they will also talk about the chakras. So hopefully you can see that. So here's the guy again. This time he's sort of in a beige guy, right? And he's got a chakra. This is the crown of. This is not the absolute top of the head. This is sort of, if you can see, like this is the crown up here, and here's the head chakra. It's lower. It's like inside the skull, and then the throat, and this is supposed to be the heart center. So you could think between the nipples, and this is at the navel, right? And then in Vajrayogini, there's this blue channel extends about 4 fingers below the navel. In each of these centers, so head, throat, heart, navel, or belly button, there are these energy centers. So this shape, I don't know why it's triangular, circular, whatever these are. This is supposed to be representing, how the energy comes up through the central channel. So let's just do the top one, the head, right? And then I think if we counted these, there would be 32, right?
I
So
did.
that,
They are 32.
right. So
8
there's,
times 4.
yeah. So, and then this is 16, and this is 8, and this is 64. And so there's a whole long practice in Inner Vajrayogini, and I'm not trying to get too hung up on this, but the point that I want to make is we're basically saying, as an image, this is a description of experience, that your consciousness flows through these channels, and then it will come out and express itself like electricity following a current from one of these energy centers, and this goes through the whole body. So in the usual description of this, the crown, goes down to control the face and the head, and this is the neck and the upper torso. This goes to the heart and sort of the mid torso, and this is going to control the stomach and all of that, right? So it's like the energy going through the body. And, how about the legs? Well, that's probably going to come out of here. But I don't want to get lost in the weeds of like how all the channels go to this place and that place. It's just this basic idea that you have consciousness going through your body. We have this weird Western concept that consciousness is just here in the head. And the rest of this is like some machine running on, human gasoline, cookies and bacon for me, right? And it's not conscious. But if you've done any Vajrayana practice, and I think the same thing is true in meditation is freedom and other practices, you begin to go, oh no, I feel my aliveness here and here. And so we've confused this, which feels experientially the head as if it is the center of our thoughts. We've identified thought with consciousness. Big mistake. There's more to consciousness than thought. And then we've limited it from the neck up. And so I think where I want to leave this discussion for today is that there is the possibility of connecting with the movement of consciousness throughout your entire experience, represented metaphorically, visually on this diagram. And what this practice is going to do is collect the consciousness at the heart center and then eject it. That's the essence of the practice. So,
Right. Could you possibly put the link to this in the chat?
yep.
To both of them, actually.
Well, I'm going to send you both of you some stuff, and it won't be in the chat. I'll send you it in an email, and
Okay.
it'll go to other
Oh,
people.
that's way better.
Yeah.
So I do have a question.
Okay.
And if it's not the time to answer it, then don't.
Okay.
How does what you're talking about relate to the 6 yogas of Naropa?
This is one of the 6 yogas.
Okay.
So they all work. They all work with the experience of subtle consciousness. Right? So we're holding ourselves on an imagination that, like the outer practice and a yidam practice like chakra sambhara or vajrayogini, you hold yourself on the outer imagination, and then you can do the inner, which has to do with all these channels, and then you can do the more subtle, which has to do with the yogas. But
Has
you're
to do with what?
with the yogas, the 6 yogas. So, and
Okay.
almost everybody can do Phowa. It's not absolutely everybody, but almost everybody. When I was going into retreat, I'm going to stop the share here. When I was going into retreat, where I want to go over here, I was talking to this other 3-year retreatant who was very kind to me and giving me encouragement. And she said, in Tibet, this is what the grandmothers do. The grandmoms can do this practice. You don't have to be somebody special. This is how everybody gets ready to die. And And then she said, her name was Susan, everybody can do Phowa, and almost everybody can do one of the other six, of the other five. So pretty much everybody can do 2 out of the 6. You're an all-star if you can do 3 out of the 6. You're a Hall of Famer if you can do 4 out of the 6. You're a freak if you can do all of them. So it's like, okay, let's relax. This is one of the easiest ones to start with. Right?
Dream yoga, one of them too?
One of them. Yeah. Dream, Bardo, Rainbow Body, Phowa, the Heat Yoga, and luminosity, the practice of luminosity. Those are the 6. And then there are 6, so that's the 6 yogas of Naropa. There are 6 yogas from his sister. She was not named Sally. Her name was Naguma. And then there are other yogas of, I'm sure there's a version of this from Tsongkhapa, right? Like it would be odd if there wasn't. And, from the founder of the Gelug school and 6 yogas in the Sakya school or whatever. They all have different names, but they're all working on the same principles of absolute and relative, the way things appear, and the bigger truth, right? And then using the way they appear to sort of get yourself connected to the bigger, deeper understanding.
So Tumo is another one, right?
Tumo is heat yoga, yeah.
Is the heat one, right?
Yeah. It's
Inner
Tumo in
heat.
Tibetan and Chandali in Sanskrit, or heat yoga.
Yeah.
Or
Well, you're going to
Kundalini.
sign off.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's also, like other practices call it Kundalini. We're talking about the same thing, the Kundalini.
Which Tumo or the whole thing?
Tumo.
Before you have to sign off, Brian, I just want to, um, I don't know how to say this properly and have you understand it. Well, maybe you'll understand it, even though it's going to be clunky. But I am so, 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 so very grateful for this teaching.
You're welcome.
Ditto.
What a wonderful, wonderful gift.
So maybe what we have to do, Wednesday's a little busy for me at this point. So let's see if we can come up with, just as I get ready to sign off, if we can come up with something like a Tuesday or a Thursday or some time that works for the 3 of us, and then we'll invite other people. Right? So
Okay,
let's,
well, I can tell you right now, Tuesday and Thursday work fine. So
Jeff.
you choose which is best for you, and I don't know how you are, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm good with most days. So
Yeah. It's just that with the meditation is freedom and community refuge later tonight,
Yeah.
I'm playing a double header today. Might be a triple header. I don't know.
ooh,
So, all right, friends.
Well, I also like all these things are meshing in together. That's wonderful.
Let's
Yeah.
dedicate whatever goodness we've accomplished. By this merit, may all
May
attain
all obtain admissions. May
may it
defeat the
defeat
enemy
the enemy
wrongdoing.
wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, old age,
Old age,
sickness, and death,
illness, and death.
from the
Social
ocean of
samsara.
samsara. May I free
May
all
I
beings.
free all beings.
All right, guys. I will send the
See you
recording
tonight.
and other
see you
stuff
soon.
tonight or later in 10 minutes if you want to do meditation is freedom.
I'll be there.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.